floodlights just kicked on over the culture, and the whisper making the rounds tonight is that Kendrick Lamar is moving again. Not in the polished, press-run, rollout sense, but in that ghost-in-the-machine way that only Kendrick Lamar can pull off. Because a brand new song has just slipped out of the vault, a leak nobody was cleared to hear, and the fingerprints all over it are pointing at something much bigger than a stray demo. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear is not a random throwaway. And by the time we're finished breaking this down, you are going to understand why even the pretenders folding in real time from Drake to The Game to every one of these rap game imposters cannot survive what Kendrick Lamar is quietly building in the shadows. Hit that like button, lock in your subscribe, and let's tear this thing apart piece by piece. Because here is the reality we are dealing with right now. Kendrick Lamar is the most feared pen in the culture, and it is not close. It has not been close since the moment he detonated Meet the Grams on the internet and made an entire genre rewrite its own rulebook in a single weekend. And now, in the middle of a year that already gave us GNX, in the middle of a run that already gave us Not Like Us, in the middle of a legacy that already gave us To Pimp a Butterfly and Damn and Mr. Morale and The Big Steppers, Kendrick Lamar is somehow still finding ways to sneak new material through the cracks. And this latest one is the strangest, most revealing leak we've seen in years. Here's what we know. A 20-second snippet. That's it. 20 seconds. No more, no less. Surfaced online in the last few hours, and it features Kendrick Lamar rapping in a voice we barely recognize. It is raw. It is loose. It is almost slurred in that intentional way that only a rapper who has already conquered the technique can perform. Kendrick is bouncing between pockets like a boxer feinting jabs, and he is riding a beat that anyone who has been paying attention to hip-hop this year will recognize on the first bar. Because this is not just any beat. This is a track 7 cut from what most of us have already crowned the second-best rap album of the year, Alfredo 2, the return of Freddie Gibbs and the desert Alchemist himself. This is the beat from the song Feeling, the one that already features Freddie Gibbs and the smoothest, most reliably underrated pen in the West Coast right now, Larry June. Now here's the wrinkle. Kendrick Lamar rapping over an Alchemist beat is not, by itself, a surprise. These two have a working relationship that goes back years, a chemistry that has produced some of the most jaw-dropping moments in Kendrick's discography. Alchemist himself has already told the story publicly. He sent Kendrick Lamar the Meet the Grams beat a long time before it ever became the sonic guillotine that ended the biggest beef of the decade, and he sat on it, unaware that Kendrick was quietly loading the chamber. Alchemist gave Kendrick Lamar the We Cry Together beat on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Alchemist gave Kendrick Lamar the beat for Fear on Damn. Alchemist has been quietly stitched into every era of Kendrick's catalog, and every time these two link, the result is culture shifting. So on paper, this leak could be that simple. Alchemist sent Kendrick Lamar a beat, Kendrick Lamar messed around with it in the booth, it never turned into anything, and Freddie Gibbs and Larry June ended up beating him to the finish line. Case closed. But that's not what my gut is telling me. And this is where the picture cracks open. Because if you have been watching Kendrick Lamar the way I have been watching Kendrick Lamar over these last 12 months, you already know that his vault is one of the tightest, most heavily guarded chambers in modern music. Kendrick Lamar does not leak. Kendrick Lamar does not accidentally slip. The man's team runs their sessions like a Black Ops unit. And yet, in the span of just a few months, we have now watched 2 Kendrick Lamar cuts escape into the wild. First the Here Comes the Boom track with Ray Vaughn and J-Rock from the GNX era, and now this. 2 leaks. 2 escapes. 2 songs Kendrick Lamar was never supposed to release, both suddenly out in the open. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. And once you start looking for the pattern, you cannot unsee it. Because notice something. Both of these leaked Kendrick Lamar cuts share a very specific fingerprint. They are not solo Kendrick songs. They are collaborations. The Here Comes the Boom leak has other rappers on it. This new Alfredo 2 beat leak has Freddie Gibbs and Larry June on the finished version. In other words, Kendrick Lamar's personal vault is not the source of these leaks. The leaks are coming from outside his tent, from the collaborators, from the studios he visited, from the beats he was sent that ended up on other people's albums. And the moment you accept that, the entire story shifts, because now we are not talking about a demo left behind. We are potentially talking about a Kendrick Lamar verse that was intended to land on somebody else's project, and somebody, somewhere, decided it wasn't going to make the cut. So let's ask the question that every real hip-hop head watching this right now is already asking. Was Kendrick Lamar supposed to be on Alfredo 2? Was the biggest rapper alive originally penciled in for a feature on the album most critics are already calling the best pure rap release of the year? And if so, what in the world happened? Now I want to be careful here, because this is a mystery, not a confirmed fact. But look at the evidence with me. Freddie Gibbs and the Desert Alchemist are not shy about pulling elite features. On the first Alfredo, they landed Tyler, the creator. In their unreleased vault, they have already cooked up material with Kanye West, material that has surfaced in fragments over the last 2 years and still hasn't officially dropped. These two do not miss when it comes to lining up rare, high-value collaborators. So the idea that Kendrick Lamar was in the mix for Alfredo 2 is not far-fetched. It is, if anything, the most logical explanation for why we are now hearing Kendrick Lamar rap over a beat that ended up as track 7 on somebody else's album. And now roll the tape forward. Look at who is on Alfredo 2. Freddie Gibbs, Larry June, Anderson .Paak, JID. That is not a random guest list. That is a very specific quadrant of the culture. That is the pen first, personality second, gimmick never, wing of modern hip-hop. The exact wing that Kendrick Lamar has been publicly aligning himself with all year. Look at Kendrick Lamar's public moves in the last 12 months. The Clipse dropped their album with him on it, Chains and Whips, a song so heavy it broke the internet for a week straight. A song Kendrick Lamar then walked on stage and performed live with Pusha T and Malice when the Clipse rolled through Los Angeles. And who else was in that same room, in that same city, on that same night? JID was there. Freddie Gibbs is publicly cool with the Clipse. Every single one of the artists on Alfredo 2 is orbiting the same axis Kendrick Lamar is orbiting. This is not 6 degrees of separation. This is 1 degree of separation. This is the family. Now here's the second layer, and this one is going to sting for a lot of you. Because if this quadrant is the family, if this is the Kendrick Lamar Clipse JID Freddie Gibbs axis of modern real rap, then look at who is not in that family anymore. J. Cole. JID and J. Cole used to be inseparable. JID was the crown jewel of Dreamville. The heir apparent to the throne Cole was preparing to hand down. And now, JID is out here running with the Clipse, showing up at Kendrick Lamar concerts, ending up on Freddie Gibbs and Alchemist albums. JID has moved. JID has picked a lane. And that lane is not Dreamville. That lane is not J. Cole. That lane is the lane Kendrick Lamar has been quietly building for the last 3 years. A lane that has no room in it for artists who tap out of beefs, no room for artists who apologize on stage, and definitely no room for artists whose entire discography feels like a corporate playlist. The pretenders are folding in real time, and every one of these micro-alliances is confirming it. But let's rewind and go back to the actual song, because I don't want to lose the plot here. What are we actually hearing on this Kendrick Lamar leak? The vocal is loose. It is raw. It is unmixed. But if you listen closely, and I have listened to this thing 30 times in the last 24 hours, you can hear Kendrick Lamar building something. There is wordplay in there. There is a repeating internal rhyme scheme that Kendrick is clearly stress testing. There is a cadence choice that feels experimental, almost like Kendrick Lamar is trying to hear what the pocket sounds like before he commits to a full verse. This is a Kendrick Lamar demo, but it is a Kendrick Lamar demo that is already halfway to being a finished record. And that is what makes this so devastating for the culture. Because if Kendrick Lamar was already this deep into a verse for a song that never came out, that means somewhere in his vault right now, there are dozens, maybe hundreds, of these fragments sitting on hard drives, waiting. And that is a terrifying thought for every rapper who is not Kendrick Lamar. Because these guys are trying to figure out how to keep up with the version of Kendrick Lamar that he releases. They are watching GNX and trying to reverse engineer a competitive response. They are watching Not Like Us and trying to figure out how to survive the next verse. And what they don't realize is that the Kendrick Lamar we see on the surface is a small fraction of what is actually being built in the studio. The leaks are showing us what the pretenders will never be able to touch. The second team, the throwaways, the ideas Kendrick Lamar didn't even bother to finish. And those throwaways are already better than 99% of the big releases being celebrated in the industry right now. Now I want to zoom back out, because I know what a lot of you are thinking. You are thinking, okay, so what? Kendrick Lamar might have been on Alfredo 2 and might not have made the album. Why does it matter? And the answer to that question is why we are having this conversation in the first place. Because the pattern is what matters. This is the second Kendrick Lamar leak in a matter of months. This is the second cut that got shelved. This is the second piece of evidence that Kendrick Lamar is working in ways the industry cannot see. And every single time these fragments hit the timeline, they are quietly rearranging the map of who matters and who doesn't in modern hip-hop. Because let's talk about the map. Let's talk about the factions. Because we are in the era of alliances now, the era where every single artist has to pick a side, and every side has consequences. On one side of the map, you have the Kendrick Lamar wing, Kendrick Lamar himself, Baby Keem, the entire PG Lang machine, the Clipse, JID, Freddie Gibbs, and by extension the Alchemist, Larry June, Anderson .Paak, and a growing list of artists who have publicly co-signed Kendrick Lamar or shown up at his events. This is the wing that treats hip-hop as a craft, not a content farm. This is the wing that still values the pen. This is the wing that produced Alfredo 2, that produced GNX, that produced Let God Sort Him Out, that has quietly assembled the greatest concentration of real MC talent this decade has seen. And on the other side of the map, you have the pretenders. You have Drake, whose last 12 months have been the most humiliating stretch of any superstar's career in living memory. The losses in the beef, the leaked texts, the tour numbers dropping, the ghostwriter allegations refusing to die, the sad radio interviews trying to spin the narrative. You have J. Cole, who tapped out of the war before the first shots even landed and has been slowly evaporating from the cultural conversation ever since. You have the entire cohort of artists who thought they could ride the middle, who thought they could stay neutral, keep their features, keep their radio spins, and never pick a side. And the map is telling them right now that neutrality is not an option. The map is telling them that Kendrick Lamar has already drawn the line, and every artist on the wrong side of it is watching their relevance decay by the quarter. Now here is where I want to pump the brakes for a second, because I want to be honest with you. We do not know for a fact that Kendrick Lamar was ever supposed to be on Alfredo 2. That is a theory. That is a read on the evidence. It is possible, and I have to say this out loud, that this leak is exactly what it appears to be on the surface. Kendrick Lamar messed around on a beat Alchemist sent him, never finished the song, and Freddie Gibbs happened to end up with the same instrumental. That is a completely reasonable interpretation. That is the boring interpretation. But it is a real one. Right when the room goes quiet, though, that boring interpretation starts to crack. Because if that were true, if this were just a random studio session, then how did the fragment leak? Kendrick Lamar's camp does not leak. Kendrick Lamar's engineers do not leak. Kendrick Lamar's producers do not leak. If this was purely a Kendrick Lamar and Alchemist private session, that snippet should still be sitting on a hard drive in Alchemist studio somewhere in Los Angeles. The fact that it is out, the fact that we are talking about it right now, tells you that the fragment lived somewhere else before it hit the internet. And the most obvious somewhere else is inside a Freddie Gibbs and Alchemist album session, where the walls are looser and the guest list is larger and the pathway from the booth to the timeline is a lot shorter. So my read, my honest read, the read I am willing to defend on this channel, is that Kendrick Lamar was at minimum in the conversation for Alfredo 2. Whether he actually laid a full verse, whether he cleared it, whether it was ever officially discussed in a business meeting between the labels, those are the parts of the story we may never get answers to. But the fingerprint is there. The beat is there. The vocal is there. The alliances are there. The pattern is there. And when you stack all of that evidence on top of the second leak in 6 months, you don't have a coincidence. You have a story. And that story is that Kendrick Lamar is deeper into the fabric of modern hip-hop than any of us can fully see from the outside. Let me talk about what this means for the game going forward, because I think this is the piece a lot of channels are going to miss. When you have an artist of Kendrick Lamar's caliber quietly popping up in the sessions of other elite rap albums, when you have the biggest name in the culture spending his private time on beats that end up on Freddie Gibbs and Alchemist projects instead of Drake features or J. Cole collaborations, you are watching a soft power play in real time. Kendrick Lamar is choosing his neighbors. He is picking the artists he wants to be adjacent to. He is quietly rebuilding the geography of who matters in hip-hop by simply showing up in the studios he wants to be in and not showing up in the ones he does not. And that is a much scarier version of Kendrick Lamar than the one who releases albums and hits stadium tours. Because the album-releasing version of Kendrick Lamar is at least predictable. You know when GNX is coming out. You know when the tour dates drop. You can prepare. But the version of Kendrick Lamar we are catching glimpses of through these leaks, the version who is quietly seeding verses into other artists' sessions, quietly building alliances, quietly redrawing the culture from the inside, that version is impossible to compete with. Because you cannot beat what you cannot see. Now let me hit you with something else, because I want to give you every angle on this. There is a school of thought, and I have seen it in the comments already on the shorter reactions to this leak, that says maybe Kendrick Lamar himself is behind the leak. That maybe this is a controlled release. That maybe this is Kendrick Lamar quietly signaling to the culture that he was in these rooms, without ever having to make an official announcement. I want to be careful with this theory, because it is speculative. But it is not crazy. Kendrick Lamar has always been a master of narrative control. Every rollout he has ever done, from Good Kid Mad City to To Pimp a Butterfly to Damn to Mr. Morale to GNX, has been a masterclass in what to reveal and what to hide. So the idea that Kendrick Lamar might allow, not orchestrate, but allow, a fragment like this to escape at exactly the right moment in the news cycle, that is not out of character. That is entirely in character. And if that is what is happening here, then this leak is not an accident. This leak is a signal. And the signal is this. The most feared pen in the culture is still writing. The most feared pen in the culture is still recording. The most feared pen in the culture is still choosing his rooms. And every room he chooses is another notch in the belt of the wing of hip-hop that is quietly winning while everybody else argues about streams and podcast appearances and Instagram feuds. Kendrick Lamar is not in the noise. Kendrick Lamar is in the work. And the work is starting to leak out of every corner of the industry because there is simply too much of it to keep locked up forever. I want to give you one more piece of context before we wrap this up, because I think it matters. Look at Kendrick Lamar's release cadence over the last 2 years. GNX came out of nowhere. Not Like Us came out of nowhere. Meet the Grams came out of nowhere. Kendrick Lamar has completely abandoned the traditional album cycle model. He is not doing 18-month press runs. He is not dropping teaser singles 4 weeks in advance. He is showing up when he wants, dropping what he wants, and disappearing again into the studio for the next round. And in a world where every other major artist is glued to the promotional treadmill, the Instagram lives, the podcast tours, the ghost-written interview quotes, Kendrick Lamar has built the exact opposite. He has built a career where his absence is more powerful than most artists' presence. And when the leaks like this one hit, they hit harder precisely because we do not have a constant feed of Kendrick Lamar content polluting the timeline. Every fragment feels like an event. Every 20-second clip feels like a headline. That is not by accident. That is by design. So where does this leave us tonight? It leaves us with more questions than answers, which, if you have been watching Kendrick Lamar carefully, is exactly where Kendrick Lamar wants us to be. We do not know whether he was formally slated to be on Alfredo 2. We do not know how much of this leaked snippet was a finished verse versus a booth doodle. We do not know when, or if, the full record will ever surface. But we do know this. Kendrick Lamar is moving. Kendrick Lamar is working. Kendrick Lamar is putting fragments into every corner of the culture that matters. And every leak, every whisper, every 20-second clip is another data point confirming what a lot of us have been saying since the beef ended. That Kendrick Lamar did not just win the war against Drake. Kendrick Lamar reshaped the entire battlefield, and he is still reshaping it right now, one silent studio session at a time. Let me be honest with you about something. I love these moments. As a fan, as a hip-hop head, as somebody who has been documenting this culture for a long time. The leaks, the mysteries, the what-ifs, the ghost verses, the was he supposed to be on this album scenarios. These are the moments that make hip-hop feel alive in a way that nothing else in music can replicate. There is no other genre where a 20-second snippet from a leaked collaboration triggers a week of think pieces and comment section warfare. There is no other genre where the absence of an announcement is itself a story. And Kendrick Lamar, more than any artist of his generation, has built his entire career on that specific kind of magic. The magic of what is not said. The magic of what is not released. The magic of the version of the song that never came out. And that brings me back to the Pretenders. Because if you are a rapper who came up in the same era as Kendrick Lamar, and you are looking at this landscape right now, you have to be asking yourself some very uncomfortable questions. You have to be asking yourself why your name is not in the sessions of Alfredo 2. You have to be asking yourself why the Clipse are performing on stage with Kendrick Lamar and not with you. You have to be asking yourself why the pin-first wing of hip-hop is quietly building a coalition that does not include you. And you have to be asking yourself whether the last 12 months of your career were a temporary slump or a permanent verdict. Because from where I sit, the verdict is looking more permanent by the week. The Pretenders are folding in real time. The war for the culture is not being fought in diss tracks anymore. It is being fought in guest lists, in studio sessions, in the 20-second leaks that are quietly revealing who is really in the room and who has been locked out. Drake is not in the room. J. Cole is not in the room. The entire crop of mid-tier commercial-first rappers is not in the room. And every leak like this one is another confirmation of it. Kendrick Lamar has locked the door, and he has locked it with the specific artists he respects on the inside with him. And once you understand that, you understand why these leaks matter. They are not just cool little demos. They are receipts. They are proof of who the biggest rapper alive is choosing to build with. So here is where we land tonight. That's the whole picture from where I sit. We have a new Kendrick Lamar snippet. We have a leaked collaboration that appears to trace back to the Alfredo 2 sessions. We have a pattern of leaks that only escape when Kendrick Lamar is in the room with other artists. We have a growing alliance of pin-first, craft-first MCs quietly rebuilding the map of who matters in modern hip-hop. And we have a version of Kendrick Lamar who is more active behind the scenes than at any point in his career, and who is doing it all without a single press release, without a single billboard, without a single Instagram announcement. He is just working, quietly, constantly, everywhere. And the industry is only catching glimpses of it when the fragments slip through the cracks. Right when the room goes quiet. Right when the timeline moves on. Right when the pretenders think they have found a moment of peace. That is exactly the moment Kendrick Lamar tends to strike. That is the pattern of his entire career. He does not warn you. He does not tease. He does not run promo cycles. He appears, he detonates, and he vanishes back into the studio. And every leak like this one is a reminder that the vanish is not a break. The vanish is the work. And the work is coming. So let me leave you with this. Drop your read on this leak in the comments. Do you think Kendrick Lamar was actually supposed to be on Alfredo too? Or is this just a happy accident of a shared instrumental? Do you think the leaks are organic? Or do you think Kendrick Lamar's camp is quietly steering the narrative? And most importantly, who do you think is next to leak? Who is next to slip out of this quiet run Kendrick Lamar is on? Because I promise you, this is not the last 20-second snippet we are going to be talking about this year. If you rocked with this breakdown, do me one favor. Hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel get pushed to more of the real hip-hop fans who care about the culture the way you and I care about the culture. Subscribe if you have not already, because we are going to be tracking every single one of these leaks as they surface, and you do not want to miss the bigger story I am about to break down in the video waiting for you on your screen right now. It ties directly into everything we just talked about. The Kendrick Lamar coalition, the Alfredo 2 mystery, the map of who is quietly locking arms behind the scenes, and it is going to answer a couple of the questions we could not answer in this one. Go tap in. I will see you over there. Kendrick Lamar is moving, and the culture is only starting to catch up.